The nation is under siege. The nation is under siege.
Well, I suppose the nation is under siege. At least Trump's trying to. We've had a lot of good news in the last couple of weeks. In any case, this is Divided We Stand. If you're unfamiliar with the channel, we are on YouTube. We ask that you subscribe. You can find us there. It's a little bit difficult because there are quite a few Divided We Stand pages. Not all of them are about politics, but look for the political one and we'll be there. We are not monetized. We're not looking for anything, just your commiseration and your input. That's it. If you are on Facebook, we have a Facebook group page called the Divided We Stand group page. Very popular on Facebook. A lot of new members. So we ask that you become a member of that group too. And you can participate. It's very, very interactive, as this is too. So if you have a comment tonight, please comment and we'll see if we can address it. We'll have a nice discussion and we'll take it from there. I am Brian Weinstein. We're recording and broadcasting from Richmond, New Jersey via Arlington, Virginia. At this time, I'd like to introduce my co-host, who is also a journalist, educator, podcaster, former musician, and such. And that would be our David Price from Arlington, Virginia. Dave, you're not in Arlington, are you? If I can find you. There he is, Mr. Personality. Looks nice and bright there, Dave.
Brian. We finally started the show with a lie again that I was in Arlington, but finally you cleared it up. Do you realize you said from Arlington?
Well, it's usually from Arlington. I mean,
okay.
I vaguely remember you saying something on the phone that I'm not in, or wherever you are in New Jersey somewhere. I have no idea.
Well, you know what?
Your heart is in Arlington.
Well, no, not really.
Well, where in New Jersey are you? Or is this incognito?
No, I'm exactly 32 minutes from where you are right now in New Jersey.
Interesting. All right. So has New Jersey changed since you last?
No. If this were a travel show, though, we went to some really interesting places, which we do. And Judy has family here, so we come back periodically. And I think it's important, so there's no hint of collusion on this show, that when we come back to New Jersey, you notice we never visit you. You understand? You know, we haven't visited you now in 13 years. We haven't visited you in 13 plus 20, 32 years. I think is a running total, and I feel better for it. No, we're here. We're here for family. We're here for friends. And I do have a big announcement.
Big announcement, folks. Hold on to your chair.
It took me 72 years, but I've finally been in a private residence, i.e. a home, where they had an elevator. And that was a big moment in my life. I've never been in a house that had an elevator. That's really cool.
Is it for health reasons or just too tired?
It's like a huge elevator. It's for both. Yes, it's for some health reasons, and it's family, and shall we say they are extremely wealthy, And Brian, just we talk about the economy on this show sometimes, and we talk about the divided parts of America, and of course, one of the divides is wealth. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
And of course, when you look at that divide, pretty much it falls for my lifetime of the Republicans supporting the big money, and the Democrats being the party more thought of as labor and the middle class and the
The
poor
working
man.
man
Would you
or
agree?
woman. Yes.
Yeah, true. Well, okay. So if I say this family is in the wealthier part, obviously, and for anyone who doesn't know geography, Ocean City, New Jersey, is at the shore. And as wise people have said, God ain't making no more water, and He certainly ain't making no more ocean. So, land is expensive. Would you agree with that, Brian?
Yes.
Okay. So to have a 3-story home,
Mhm.
a block from the beach, so from the top of that, you can see the ocean, from the top of the home. You can't. Do you have any idea what it would cost to build to take down an existing home and put up a brand new home, uh, given the conditions?
I don't know. I mean, it depends on where you are, of course.
Ocean City, a
Ocean
block from
City,
the
well,
beach.
it's there's $1 million homes here. I mean, look, if something's wrong, I guess FEMA will pay for it.
What
Sure.
is, I'm not asking that, what would it cost? Listen again, listen carefully. What do you think it would cost to tear down an existing home and put up a brand new 3-story home that we've already determined has
I
an
would say
elevator?
$3 or $4 million.
You would be not even close. 6.5 million.
Hmm. Well, of course, I'm a man with tens and tens of dollars, Dave. So
All
I
right,
don't
I
have
understand that. And
any way
would
of
this come as
figuring.
any surprise? The majority of the town consists of Republicans or Democrats. What do you think?
Republicans, because I know some.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely true. And it's fun to go down and hang out with the rich and non-famous, although there are some famous people there. Um, but it's so funny because I don't hang with those kind of people, right? You know, and
Well,
they're
you are
just
now. You're right there.
no, no, we're
No,
not there now. We
no, we're not.
visited,
Okay.
we visited yesterday and today. Now I'm in Buena Township, but you know, how we talk about we're in enclaves and we're in groups and this and that and the other, and think about it. I mean, this is a city of millionaires, so it's kind of interesting. They're also on that same feed loop back for the first time in this election cycle on the way to Ocean City. I saw my first Trump signs, so it's nice to be back in South Jersey where Trump is God. One of the things for anybody who's not familiar with the shore, one of the fun things you can do, the boardwalk, you know, it's not sleazy, but it's not high class either. It's kind of in between. But they have a lot of T-shirt shops, and every year I like to go down there at least once a year and check out what the number 1 and 2 and 3, if I can get that far, T-shirts are
Right.
for sale, removing anything that's there every year. So obviously you remove the Ocean City T-shirts, right?
Mhm.
And tremendous number of people from Philadelphia. So remove the Eagles, any sports teams. So Brian, and this will get into politics. This will really tell us where we are as a country. Seriously, I'm not joking. What do you think are the top 3 displayed? And obviously, if they're top 3 displayed, they're probably the top 3 T-shirts sold on the boardwalk. And each one is representative of a person. It's not a thing.
Well, I would imagine Kamala and Walls, even though it's a
Okay,
Republican area. So they, sell
go ahead.
to some Democrats.
Go ahead.
Trump, Vance,
Mm-hmm.
and since it is a crazy Republican era, something with Kyle Rittenhouse.
Not bad. You got 1 out of 3.
Okay.
Um, the number one, by far, the number one was Trump. I mean, by far. Okay. Number two was Taylor Swift. And number three was the Tua girl. And if you don't know what that is, ladies and gentlemen, it's worth your time to look it up. It's kind of funny. It came from a meme, or not a meme, I'm sorry, from an interview on the streets of Nashville. It describes a sexual act. She thought she was being funny, and she was, and it's become a nationwide trend. And there you are on the T-shirt. So what does that say about America? Okay, it says that politics, play a role in it, but Donald Trump is extremely popular in Republican areas. Nothing new there. Nothing new there. Taylor Swift is kind of the antithesis of Donald Trump, if you think about it. Would you agree with that, Brian?
Yeah.
If you have Donald Trump here, I mean, she's young, she's vibrant, she's also. We'll talk about
The only
her.
thing that's similar is they both have a following.
And there you are. That's right. But a very different following for the most part.
Right.
However, we'll link those two a little bit later in the show, Taylor and Trump. And the Haktua girl.
Where does this Tua girl come from? What's just because the T-shirts there?
Okay. I no. Here's what I go. If you spend as much time researching on the internet as I do, and G.I. says, "Yeah, you're researching." Well, I am. So I spent a lot of time on X, which was formerly Twitter, simply because Trump posts on Truth Social, but most of the other right-wing people have a presence more on X. So, and then you have Facebook, and this came actually out of Facebook, and they have the thing Reels, for anybody who doesn't know, and
Right.
Reels are short videos. I mean, very short videos that go, and that's the new thing now. America's short attention spans. So there are a number of shows where young men, for the most part, although once in a while be women, they go out and they find drunk girls walking the streets of New Orleans, Nashville, New York, where people would be out. Nashville seems to be very prominent because Nashville is really right now maybe the hardest partying town in America. And they'll get usually two girls, and they'll ask them some questions. And one of the questions that is often asked is, do you do oral sex? Right? I guess people are fascinated with that. And so this one nice young Southern girl said, well, yeah. And he said, well, how do you do it? And she says, you go, and spit on that thing. And that went nationwide. Nationwide. If you are anyone under 30, you probably know what that means immediately. And that's part of the problem, right? The internet feeds America's tastes, both good and bad. So, Brian, if you spend any time, it's kind of waning now because we don't have what was it used to be? 15 seconds of fame,
Right.
And now it's about 7 seconds of fame. But this girl has sung at country concerts. It's like this becomes a huge celebrity, and Taylor Swift is a very talented singer and a great human being from everything I've seen and read about her. Donald Trump is a horrible human being, and I know that to be true. But what you said, they both share followers who are diehard supporters. So the three things, again, politics, but not the bracelet. Now, what you did say, and I think was most interesting, and I'd be interested to anyone, because I have no answer for this, I would be interested why I searched the boardwalk. I walked the entire boardwalk. And again, for anyone who's not familiar, on one side, of course, you have the beach and then leads to the ocean. And the other side is all these small shops, right? So, I mean, there's, let's see, the actual shops go from 6th to about 18th. So it's about a 12-block area. And you know what I didn't find in any shop in Ocean City, Brian? Anything for Kamala Harris or Walz. Now, do you know why that is?
Is it the mayor?
No,
City
Mm-mm.
council?
Nope.
Threats?
Nope. Simply time. They didn't, you know,
Didn't have time to, right? But
you know,
usually,
we're
people
talking.
are really quick with that kind of crap, you know?
Well, not so much there because they have, you know, it's kind of it's not instantaneous. Now it's instantaneous across America, you know, other places and online they had, you know, they have literally. If we were, we're not famous, but if we were and we said something quotable, that T-shirt would be available by the time the show ended. But I mean, I'm just guessing. I guess manufacturing, you know, it takes time. You have to get there. So, but I did think about this. You know, like I said, so if you were a foreign person, not of this country, born or raised or bred, and came in, and but you know somebody running, I mean, you say, well, this Trump, he must be extremely popular because there's nobody else out there. Now that doesn't really affect the election, but I just think it's interesting these places where you can go, whether it's the internet or like this seaside vacation spot, where you always get indications of um, what the pulse of the country is. So, how are you reading the pulse of the country, we, Brian, right now?
Well, it's like to me, it's just an ebb and flow. We have you have a wave of excitement and emotion after the convention, and
Mm-hmm.
certainly after Biden dropped out. That was wonderful. And then, of course, now you're getting the brushback from Trump and those who support him. Um, so this is kind of, to me, an analogy to what I think is going to happen, during the election. You're going to see Kamala Harris win the popular vote. I think we can all agree on that, and she will probably win the election. But now you get the blowback of what is going to happen. Um, it's just a give and take. I was watching Bill Maher last night. They had this asshole Dan Crenshaw on. He's the guy with the patch, and he's a right
Mm-hmm.
winger who supports Trump,
Right.
and he's just saying things like a lot of Republicans right now. This is their reaction to that, you know, positive energy coming out of the convention, and he's saying, "Oh well, if you just look at policy, you forget about the name Donald Trump, and you look at policy. Most Americans, if you just looked at the Republican platform, you'd say, yeah, that's good, and you wouldn't want the Democratic Party." And he just makes shit up as he goes, but he makes it sound like it's fact. And Carville was having a tough time with him, but Carville didn't do much for himself. He had this stain on, a huge stain on his sweater. It was just a sweatshirt. But no, I mean, I feel that the pulse of the country right now is this ebb and this flow, and this ebb and this flow, and we know we have 2 months and a half left, and who knows what's going to happen. I just think because the greater the energy on the Democratic side, the more devious the Republican Party is going to be. And so what I'm seeing right now is an all-out, full-fledged effort by the conservative news media, the just the conservatives out there, like Mike Johnson is now attacking Harris and Walls. They're all going to do it. It's just a wall of criticism. They're looking for this or for that to make an issue of it. They can't use the economy, although when Crenshaw talked, you'd think we're in a depression right now. And then anytime there is good news, he would say, just like Republicans, oh well, Donald Trump, set us up for that. So
Mm-hmm.
and here's a guy who doesn't even, I don't, as I understand, doesn't even have a degree in economics, and he's talking like he's an economist. He comes to some slick thing about supply and demand. So anyway, long story short, to answer your question, I just see this constant ebb and flow of energy, and it's like, but the problem is you have n- negative energy, which is the Republican Party, and positive energy, and hopefully this thing, I don't know how you keep this thing going, Dave. Do you just keep going out there and getting more support from people, perhaps from Taylor Swift, or somebody? I think Taylor Swift would be afraid to support Harris right now because you just don't know what kind of crazies are out there. I mean, what do you think?
Well, I'm going to do it this way. When it was a race between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, try to keep an open mind, but there's no question that Donald Trump would have beaten Joe Biden. I believe that. Now, it's immaterial what I believe because it's not going to happen.
Right.
You know. But what I am surprised, and I think it does show America's disdain for Donald Trump, the person, even ahead of the disdain for the Republican Party as captured in Project 2025. I am really surprised at the enthusiasm, and you also you vote with your vote, but you also vote with your money, and the outpouring of small contributions to Harris Walz. So I think America was looking there. I think there were many, many, many people who just said, "Not Trump, not Biden. Oh my God," or saying, "I'm going to vote for Biden, but I don't think he's going to win." That kind of thing. And that's the enthusiasm. And if you talk about momentum, and I always break my own rule. I keep saying, please don't talk about politics as sports. But it does lead to some of the best analogies, right? I mean, it does. So you do that. You know what happens when a team has momentum, right? They can accomplish things. Again, just an example. I was watching the Phillies last night a little bit, and they've been struggling a little bit. But last night they scored, 13 runs? It was like, just the bats, everybody was hitting. Everything was falling, Today, same thing. It was like 10-2. And that's where I see Trump, or I see Harris Walz. Now, the Democratic bench, which we've talked about before, is deep. It really is. There are about 8, 9 candidates who could have been running for president. And of course, that made all of them pretty much eligible to be the vice president. And whether it was serendipity, fortune, good luck, divine intervention, I believe that Kamala Harris chose the very best candidate for this moment in Tim Walz. Better than Shapiro, as good as Shapiro is, certainly better than Gavin Newsom, as good as Newsom is. My personal choice would have been the governor of Michigan, Mrs. Whitmore, but I knew that you couldn't have 2 women. I mean, Pete Buttigieg is one of the greatest I've ever heard, taking complex problems and simplifying it. And, he's certainly fearless. He goes on Fox all the time. So that's a positive. Now, this week, Brian, was interesting. We saw Trump continue to fall behind. He's falling behind the surge. He's falling apart in the polls now. There are polls in every state of the 7 swing states showing that Kamala is now leading. Now, there's also in 3 of those states, there's polls showing she's not, right? But that's very encouraging because Biden was ahead by 1 percentage point in one of those states. That's almost a complete reversal. So again, that momentum, that thing going. It's very hard. What makes Walz such an ideal candidate? They'll attack him 6 ways from Sunday. But he is not a wolf in sheep's clothing, but his bio reads like an old Republican bio would have read, right? Small town boy, football coach, avid hunter, was at one point had an A+ rating from NRA. However, after the Broward County, Florida shooting, he turned completely around. His daughter, he said, he credits his daughter with just working on him, and then he began researching, and he saw, if you will, saw the light, and his rating went from A+ to F. But still, he speaks with some power, and he's every man. That's what they're saying, and he really is. So what they have is a tremendous team for the time, right? Again, using a sports analogy, if you have a quarterback who does not throw the deep pass, and you have 3 wide receivers whose strength is running deep routes, doesn't work, right? Mm-hmm. I think this Harris Walz team is perfect. I think, as you alluded to, we'll see more endorsements coming. I think, again, I think Taylor Swift and Beyonce will come through. But if not, they've already added their name. Beyonce gave Kamala Harris the rights to use her song "Freedom," and that's Kamala's theme, and that's become one of her themes: freedom. I'm gonna allow you to keep your freedoms. Your First Amendment freedoms, your freedom for women to choose what they want to do, those kinds of things. And there's already a huge group of Swifties for Harris Walls. So whether they come out as kind of immaterial, but it is. It is somewhat material because people are influenced. You say it all the time, Brian. You've been saying it for years and decades, and you're absolutely right. Popular culture controls, well, two things, I shouldn't say. Two things control America: money and popular culture. Yeah, that's really you can't win anything at a national level unless you have, and unfortunately, talent comes in like a distant third, right? So if the election were held, in which we used to play this all the time, probably, if the election were held tomorrow, Harris, not in a landslide of popular vote, but I could see her getting a popular vote count much larger than Biden's. But again, it's in what states does that happen? And then, as you point out, as our cautionary of this duo, that's only step one, right? It's only step one. Because then you have what happens with Trump, what happens with Trump's people, what happens to the election deniers that have been situated on key election committees, what happens in the states like Georgia, North Carolina, where they've got new boards, new rules. So the ride will be extremely bumpy. But I think I'm going to go so far tonight as to say when the dust settles and a president is sworn in January, it will be.
Well, let me ask you this then, Dave.
Sure.
This is just a kind of a thought experiment, but I just want to get
Right.
the psychology of the Trumpers, the MAGA crowd, the ones that they'll vote for Trump
Correct.
no matter what. What do you think their opinion of Kamala Harris is
Very
vis-a-vis
easy.
Biden? They hate them equally, or is there something more with Kamala Harris?
No. Well, first of all, of course, they're trained to hate Democrats. I mean, that's by nature. If Donald Trump tomorrow said, this would be interesting. Talk about an experiment, thought experiment. If Donald Trump tomorrow said, guys, listen, I had a revelation last night. God visited me and said, you got to be a Democrat. Would they follow? Well, we don't know that. That's not going to happen. But basically, now, who do they despise more? I think they despise Harris more.
I would agree.
For two reasons. Number one, she is non-white, and notice they've tried all these attacks, but they're just not striking with it, right? They've tried to say, Trump says, well, one day she was Indian, and then one day she turned black. But even that terminology turns people. It really does. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, we're not fighting to steal Trump votes. We're fighting to gain votes for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz that Joe Biden would have had if the candidate had been Joe Biden. So yes, I would say, and her being a woman is really, it's so blatant. I was with a friend in Jersey, and she's I don't want to say she's naive to the world, right? She's a little bit older than I am. She's naive. And she just sat there she said, I stay up at night worried about it. And she was starting, you could hear her voice, right? What's going to happen? And she said, I just don't understand. I just don't understand how anybody can support Donald Trump. Well, from a logic standpoint, neither do I. Okay. But they do. And they have their reasons. And they vary from, I'd rather die than see a Democrat in office, to, it's best for me, if you're wealthy or whatever the reasons. I mean, there are many, but I think what disturbs me most is the fact that Trump is not the type of leader that gathered. They did not gravitate to him because of who he was. They gravitated to him because he articulated the hatred and the anger and the fear that they have. And he does it in such a way that is ludicrous. Millions and millions of people crossing the border. Where are all these people? Where are these millions? Now, are there people crossing the border? Absolutely. Are there large numbers? But millions and millions. So, if that helps answer your question, like I said, yes, I think. But what's the difference this time? Where things were stuck to Biden, especially the age, which it was clear when he did that debate performance. There was no way after that he was going to win the election.
Right. Well, I see right now it's just, okay, look, we have a lot of good news. We have, again, the momentum. As you said, some things aren't sticking, or many things aren't sticking. And I've been looking at, how they're trying to typecast Kamala Harris. And the only thing that I can see they come up with is the old one. They call her a communist. And Dan Crenshaw was saying that they're too far to the left and this and that.
But it's hard,
and they know that's bullshit. But the problem is they do know that their constituents believe it.
But again, Brian, remember, and what you're saying is 100% accurate. But we're not worried about the people who would look at Kamala Harris and think, gee, there's a communist or a socialist or a fascist, which they've labeled. And I love when they do all three, because there couldn't be three more antithetical. You can't be a communist and a socialist and fascist, right?
Right.
The humor is you can't be a Trump supporter.
But you can in a Trump mind, because they don't know the difference between communism and socialism.
I understand that.
Progressive.
I understand that. But those kinds of charges, will not, I don't think, will not sway or move this mass, and we don't know how big it is, right? We don't know how big it is, of people who had not made up their minds yet. You have a couple, and you really have three sides to that. You have I haven't made up my mind yet, it's too early. You have I don't like either one.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second.
Sure.
Because I'm going to forget this if I don't get this.
Yeah, I do the same thing.
But when we say that people haven't made up their mind, I find anybody who can't make up, there's such a stark contrast between the two candidates. What does that tell you about that type of person?
It tells what it tells me.
I want you to be straightforward with it too. Don't
No, I won't go. It tells me, first of all, that they have a real problem when they go to a restaurant, because they can't pick from the menu what they want. Okay. I mean, really, that's and it tells me that they don't want to commit. So you don't know how many people who said, I don't make up my mind, had made up their mind. When you do these polls, you don't know who's telling the truth and who's not. It tells me that they don't really know politics in depth. And I don't mean in depth the way a political writer for the Washington Post would know it, but just in a way, I'm not real sure they know how democracy functions. And quite honestly, and this is my feeling, and I would discuss it with anyone or argue with anyone who's on the other side. Politics affects your personal life on earth far more than any religion.
Absolutely.
Far more than any. But again, if you're trained and you go to the church, the kind of thing, you're indoctrinated, or you believe. I mean, I'm not put it by that category. But usually, if you feel that way, you do pick a candidate. But I think they did a number of polls, again, not so scientific, small things. A couple of them got 10 voters who were in this undecided category. And they waited and they did it after, and they knew they were going to do this. So they said, please watch the Trump acceptance speech and the Harris acceptance speech. You didn't have to watch the whole convention, right? And I thought this was very encouraging. Maybe it was a wrong kind of group or not representative group. 8 of those 10 said they now would be voting for Kamala Harris.
Right.
1 said he was voting for Donald Trump. And 1 said, I'm still, that word we have, undecided. Now, with that,
finish up.
no, that's it. The only thing I want to say is, now, that was, if that they did that, those were done in swing states, all right? Had you done that in Montana, you would not see those results, okay? I don't think you'd find 8, 10 people in Montana who haven't made up their mind. And it's going to, it's for Republicans. John Tester, who's been a really good senator, I do not see him winning unless there is this explosion of independents or non-voters or whatever rushing.
It's just not that big of a state,
No,
Dave.
no.
I can't see anything changing. He's going to lose.
Look, and Julie, here, put that back.
That's the one I do want. Yeah, we want to address this.
We start doing some questions here. Okay,
Yeah,
so
it's kind
Trump
of like a
says
dog whistle with how they
we'll walk all over Harris because of how she looks, and he doesn't want to say why, but people understand what he means. Yes, look, let's be honest. We're always supposed to be honest, right? I hate when people let's be honest. What, you were dishonest a minute ago when you told me I had a fatal disease?
right, but it emphasizes.
I know. I'm going to say, look, 2 things. The world, 3 things. The world has been, except for small moments in isolated places, has been patriarchal since the beginning of time. It has been men-driven, number 1. Number 2, while there are many things that are better today in terms of science and health, the world is still a fucked up place. So ergo, if men were leading, right, and the place is fucked up, who do we blame? We blame the men, as we should, because they were the leaders and selectors. And I will submit to you that if anybody's honest, said, I believe that you'd have to say that a world, if you had to choose between a woman and a man, a woman would be a better leader 19 times out of 20.
They're more reasonable to me. As a
They're more.
rule.
They understand emotion. I mean, look at what they do. I'm not saying that. I know.
Not as
I
much
know a single dad.
testosterone as we do too.
I mean, but basically, this is what happens. Reduced to its essence across the United States. Guys go to work and they come home and they do what they want. Women go to work and then they come home and then they take care of the family and then they clean the house. They say women's work is never done, and that is true. So Trump is the ultimate misogynist. I mean, I can't think of anybody more misogynistic than Donald Trump. I'm sure they're out there, but not so much. So he doesn't care about any human being, let alone women. They're there for his pleasure. What they say apparently, and he acts like it. Apparently, his penis is not even normal size. But I think so he's got this, just like he wants the gold toilet, he wants women. And there have been women, Brian, let's not kid ourselves. There's been women that have thrown themselves at him. 3 of them ended up marrying him. Okay. But, so
look at Donald Trump Jr. with that.
And I'm not so sure.
Gargoyle.
I'm going to do, I don't know if you can equate this to a personal thing, but I think there is something here. Okay. And Trump's trying to point, I can handle Putin. I can handle, this dictator. Well, Judy's cousin, they were almost raised as sisters, and she only had 1 child. Her name is Jennifer, and Jennifer is about 4'3". Now she's a really tiny, petite lady, but she went on to college, and she got her degree in French and a minor in double major with international relations. She works for the World Bank, and because she's fluent in French, they said, we will have a need. her area of expertise was the French-speaking countries of the African continent. I thought, man, that's kind of weird. But their thinking went in, and I think this is because they are also all patriarchal. So they never dealt with a woman in charge, right? And it was like, someone said, she must be a demon. Or when she would do something, it was like they just threw them off their game. And she was able to do this. In fact, she was so successful at that they sent her to Mongolia to run a project that nobody else could do. And the Mongols were so thrown by that again, so I think there is the idea, I think women are able sometimes to give and take better than men. It's not a pissing contest, as we say, with them. And then you also have the advantage that some people in some places are defer to the women. You know what I mean? And the other thing to remember, Mr. Trump, is it's not like 45 years ago when all the leaders were male. There are a number of countries now led by females, or their parliament is led by females. So Donald Trump will say anything or do anything. What I find really encouraging, are the reports coming out from inside his campaign that his closest aides are apoplectic. They believe that Trump has given up. He's given up. Nothing sticks. And all he wants to do is play golf and bitch. And look what he hasn't done recently. He hasn't done the number of rallies. He kind of disappears for periods of time. On the night of Kamala's acceptance speech, I've seen two different numbers, so I'll give them. Well, I'll give them both. I've seen 52 and I've seen 54, and I didn't count them all. 52 or 54 posts on Truth Social or repost.
Lisa's leaving us a little bit early. She has to go.
Okay, take care. But I mean, that's his fixation, and I think really, Brian, I think he's Kamala has thrown it. I think when you're 70, 100 years old or whatever Trump is, you're not quick to change your ways. Donald Trump does not change his ways, right? And he had this whole thing in his mind mapped out. Joe Biden, I'll do this, I'll do that, and I'll beat him. And he was right, okay? He was right. And he hasn't been able to adjust. And so they send Vance out, and every time Vance goes anywhere, something bad happens. I would say in my lifetime, we'll see at the end, he might be the worst. I said the two worst vice president. I talked real well, don't I? The two worst vice presidential picks in my lifetime, in no particular order, were Dan Quayle and Sarah Palin. Definitely J.D. Vance is in that category,
yes,
and may turn out to be even worse. And here's an interesting thing, and it's a one-on-one comparison. It's not like it's not like this team is playing basketball and this is football. We can't compare. Vance, I don't know if you saw it this week. Vance walked into a donut shop.
Yes, I did see that.
And all you see is Vance and his Secret Service and a couple entourage. And the woman didn't want her picture to appear on there. I mean, she didn't want to. Nobody. There was one woman at the counter, and she didn't want you to cover it up while she's giving it. Tim Walz went to a donut shop this week. Now, what I didn't have enough time to really research. I don't know who went first. I'm assuming Vance went first and Walz did it to troll him, I think. And the whole business comes out, right? And wants to high five him and talk to him and look at, away kind of is. So, certainly, Trump is, I'm sure, is second guessing his selection of Vance. And people say, the three determining factors in Vance's selection was Donnie Jr. and Eric and Peter Thiel. And for anyone who doesn't know Peter Thiel, he actually is a person who the Republicans want George Soros to be. Thiel has enough money, and he is the financial benefactor, and has been for decades, of J.D. Vance. So, and it's just interesting. The dominoes just keep falling, but not touch. This week, the biggest thing politically after the convention bump should have been Robert Kennedy Jr.'s announcement that he was. The original report was that he was going to terminate his candidacy, and people think do you realize he did not do that? He didn't do that. What he's intending to do is pull off his name in all the possible swing states that he's on. But he's going to leave his name on the ballot in other states, hoping to draw away from Kamala. And then you saw think about this. You talk about the three stooges. Now you've got Trump, J.D. Vance, and now we've added Robert Kennedy Jr. And if he's not weird, then my first name...
he's off the charts.
I mean, so it's like, it's like almost becoming... And the numbers are being crunched now. And they said at most nationwide, it'll be a 1% difference. And they're even disputing that. So what Kennedy did, you talk about being a whore. He runs this campaign, and there were people who were backing him. But now he says, well, you know what? I don't know. I guess I can't win. And he contacted both the Harris camp and the Trump camp and made them an offer. And their offer was, if you give me a cabinet level post in the area either of health or there was another thing, and, or near cabinet level at that kind of thing, I will withdraw from the race and support you. Harris, the whole team, never replied, as they should.
Right.
They should. That would only have been harmful. And of course, Trump jumped at the opportunity. Now, there are people, but I don't think this is going to happen, but you never know in this election. There are people who believe what will happen now is Vance will be forced from the ticket in some way, or leave the ticket, and Kennedy will become the vice presidential candidate. I don't think, Brian, that will happen. I don't think that will happen. Let's see what Gary's got up. Trump's throwing campaign donations, millions, into his business. Absolutely, Gary, you're absolutely right. Perhaps he steals off to Russia. Mouthpiece from there. Side note: their guys were target practicing 500 yards away yesterday. Again, and Gary's kind of indicating that. Trump is erratic, if nothing else. In some ways, he's very predictable. He's bad and he's going to be for himself. But he's also erratic. I mean, he does things that nobody else does. Or you wouldn't think are logical, or sometimes, are against his, what I would consider to be his best political interests. But it worked before. And I think the reports coming out, and I tend to believe that they are true because of what I say. Trump's a man, like sitting there going, how? How did this happen? I should have been president. God damn, and that's, well, no, not necessarily. And there are people who read that, and I'll tell you two who do, and they're both very astute politically and very astute as observers of politics. Rachel Maddow and Bernie Sanders both believe that they think is what it is. Trump has given up and realizes he can't win, and putting all, why use my energy for that? I know everybody's planning for this coup type thing to happen. But sometimes with Trump, he just rambles on. So when he talks about, I will accept the election results if they're fair. Well, he's going to say they aren't fair if he doesn't win. Now, I do want to talk about one more thing before I shut up for the week. Have you been following, Brian, the story or the reaction to Mr. Vance's son, Gus?
Yes, that was awful with Colton. Now, she deleted her tweet, but
it doesn't matter.
Right, awful.
Well, basically, I'm sure most all of our viewers and listeners know the story, but basically what happens, Gus, it's not, I say people are on the spectrum. That is not. But he has problems, some problems adjusting and displaying or understanding things, right? Uh, Based on some, uh, you know, mental kinds of things that don't
Mm.
quite jive. But he's capable of many other things. Uh, and they use some wrong words, like there was something about verbal something, and psychiatrists wanted to point out, well, that doesn't mean he can't talk or won't talk, but he's a little bit has some problems with adjusting to people in society. And when his father said, and I'm trying, Grace, which is his mother, right, and Hope and Gus, my children, you are the world to me. And Gus jumps up out of his seat, tears, not tears of just whatever, joy in hearing that, and said, "That's my dad."
Mm-hmm.
What
Very endearing.
a fucking moving moment for anybody who has an ounce of any humanity in them.
Right.
Well, don't you know that the sons of bitches and the daughters of bastards and the daughters who should be bitches and the small dicked, those with the small dicks, males of the MAGA side, come out with, there's no crying in baseball. They're attacking. And some had nerve enough to use Donald Jr. and Eric as examples of how a family raises good men. Oh, you raise someone who's the stupidest American around, that's Eric, or one of the stupidest, and you're also a good family man if you raise a cocaine user. And there's no question in my mind, none, as a recovering drug addict and alcoholic, that Eric is using cocaine, none. And he's gotten girl hangs around.
Oh, how about Donnie Jr.? I mean,
it's a Donald, yeah, Donnie
okay.
Jr. is,
okay.
Yeah, and so what you have is this misguided idea of males, but again, that cost Donald Trump votes. Let me say that again. That cost Donald Trump votes. In fact, some of those, I was talking about these different places where they brought these people in, and then of course they'd ask them, well, what are your reasons? And that was in everybody's top three. That attack showed them how heinous and reprehensible. And look, Hillary Clinton was right. She called them deplorables, and they are. When you call a MAGA supporter deplorable, the only person you're insulting are people who are deplorable for other reasons. They are. When anybody who does that, and I said, usually I try to rise.
It was vicious. It was vicious.
But even it was just flat out wrong.
Right, and she's trying to backtrack it all.
And Kohler's, but they're all trying to do, Brian, too. They have no philosophy. They have no beliefs in anything.
And that's enough to influence people. Unfortunately, propaganda can do that.
Oh, and it's even more than that, Brian, I think, too. I mean, absolutely what you say is correct. But it's also sometimes just perpetuation of a statement. And also there are people, and I'm sure you know them, we all know them, who said, well, they said it on TV, it must be true. Or, well, look, they've risen in the organization, they must be good. Look, there are men and women in the news business who rose to the top for a number of different reasons. And I want to again stress it's men and women, and sometimes that is sexual. You get satisfied. So just because somebody's there, you have to listen to them and see what they do. For example, I think Rachel Maddow is a person who believes what she says, right? I think Chris Hayes is a person who believes what he says. There are some people out there in the social, even as influencers or whatever, or have the internet, that are they're believers and they're there doing this thing. So I think as I look back on this week, which is really the coronation, I hate to use that word, of Queen Harris, and it wouldn't be Prince, what would it be? whatever, Waltz. So, Kamala and Tim, things are just going their way. I'll tell you another thing that's interesting, Brian. I think you'll be interested in it if nobody else does. And I think I've talked about it on the show before. I have a collection, for which I kept from previous times, a collection of anti-Trump T-shirts, which I wear. I'm wearing one now. I don't think you can see this. Let's see. Get this down. This is one of them. Pendejo is Spanish for stable genius.
How'd that work in Ocean City? Did they see that?
Well, that's what I'm going to get to in a moment. By the way, anybody who's not fluent in Spanish does not equate to stable genius. It's one of the biggest insults. It doesn't involve your mother in Spanish. If you're a pendejo, man, you're a lot of reasons. Well, this one, I think everybody's so staring so much at the young girls in bikinis. It didn't. I mean, it's kind of interesting. I think yesterday, the reason we came into South Jersey, I grew up in this village called Seabrook, and the Estonians. It's a long story. I mean, a documentary has just been made, and it was being shown in Millville, Brian Leavoy Theater, and we went. And I definitely wanted to make my feelings known in Cumberland County. So I had a shirt from the previous election. It has the tide, like the tide emblem, tide soap, and then it says, what is it? And in the middle it says vote. And then under it, it can remove stubborn orange stains. Mm-hmm. 4 different groups of people stopped me and wanted to talk about the shirt, wanted to say how grateful they were. One woman says, maybe I should, she had a Harris Waltz sticker on her pocketbook, so maybe I should display it more prominently. One said, I wish I could do that. 2 took pictures of it. I'm laughing because even there. And so I was talking to them, and they came a cross section of South Jersey. Only one was from Cumberland County, one was from Cape May, one was from Gloucester County. And they said, I said, what are you experiencing? What are you seeing? He said, oh man, it's just this tremendous rush of support for Harris Waltz. So if that's the case, that bodes well, right? Because as anyone who's listened to this show or anybody who lives in South Jersey is, they say, it's God's country, but Trump's running it right now. So if even in those areas, I think we're gaining. And again, back to something you said earlier, but they're just throwing shit at the wall. That's what they're doing. And nothing seems to be sticking. And that's because there's nothing behind it. And I do think this, Brian, too. I think America, unless you're a Trumper or a Republican who just wants to win at any cost, I think Trump has worn out his welcome in America. I really do. Remember, nobody stays at the top, right? We're looking for the next new thing. And you know who the next new thing is? Kamala Harris. That's the next new thing. So all the benefits of being the next new thing fall to her. Now, there's disadvantages to that too. But that's why I think that she will go in and win. And as you pointed out, I think it was last show or the show before, I guess, yeah, the show before, the more she wins by, the harder it will be to take it away, right? When it came down to Gore Bush, as I understand it, if the numbers, were accurate, it was actually 242 votes in Florida made the difference, because whoever took Florida would win, and that was that's what was in contention, and finally they moved away. And I know, look, I know people, like I said, our friend Marion, crying. There's a lot of people like that now. They're terrified. And the message I would give to them, or I would encourage you to give them, is simply what one of the messages coming out of the Harris Waltz team is. And what they say is, when we fight, we win. when we fight, we win. And that's the other thing, Brian, or another thing. Biden, for whatever reason, I'm not going to fault him. So I will praise him as, and I'll say it this way because I just think it bears repeating. If Kamala Harris beats Donald Trump, Joe Biden will save democracy twice, and there's no other person.
Right.
You know, you could say FDR saved America, and that would be true. Okay.
Right.
Lincoln preserved the Union, and that would be true. George Washington got this thing off and rolling, and that would
he's
be
up in the top 10 for sure, no doubt about
But
it.
now, well, to support what you just said, Brian, where Donald Trump finished dead last in a poll of, I don't know, hundreds of historians, Joe Biden was already 12th, before now. So, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, you need time to look back at it, from 30,000 feet and say,
Right.
okay, look what he did given the situation.
And-
Because if it goes the other way, you're done.
Yeah, and he knew that. And I think, and you hear all these stories. I'm sure the Biden family isn't real happy, and maybe Joe isn't it sometimes. But he did it. He did the right thing. It was the best thing. It was the best thing for him too.
Right.
It was.
I think that this idea of we know what a great thing he's doing and he has done. I tend to try to avoid placing them in the top this or that, even though I just said that.
Right.
It's kind of like looking at artwork and saying, what painting is the best or what song is the best. We all know what Lincoln went through, what Washington went through, and what Roosevelt went through. But I think if you just look at it, he is in that mold, though. Let's just say that there's a certain personality. He is one of those.
Here's kind of how I think of it. Okay. George Washington, because of his being number one and what he did, how many legends, the cherry tree, I mean, all these things are legend. There will be Joe Biden again, possibly even if Kamala loses, but definitely she wins. He will be an example of how someone realizes and they relinquish to let the team win.
Well, maybe in 50 years you'll see him on Mount Rushmore. So who knows?
And, or something. But I mean, that legend.
I don't know. Was it Teddy Roosevelt was on Mount? I don't know that he really deserved to be on Mount Rushmore.
Well,
he's popular, but he wasn't.
Well, he did some. I think a lot of that had to do too with his conservation stance. Yeah, it was really, and also again, pop culture. People think it just started with the internet. It didn't. Teddy had that myth, and it was real to a certain extent. But the myth of the Rough Riders, he was, and Teddy Roosevelt was very vigorous. There's an argument of who, and I think there's a clear winner. But Teddy Roosevelt's name comes up in the most active, physically active of the presidents. I think it goes to Gerald Ford simply because of Ford's ability to play football at a Division I, number one top.
He was a good athlete. He was a good athlete.
Yeah, but
even George Bush was a pretty good athlete.
Oh yeah, no, and again, and we've posted stuff we've seen, and thank you for everybody who posts, especially those who post prolifically on the thing, because that's again, there's avenues that you can see or not think about, but my wife and I were talking about it the other day, and she's kind of throwing out and said, here's some groups that were kind of cool to Biden, and they're now all hot for Kamala. Young people off the TikTok. She's talk about a moment. Her mention has exceeded Taylor Swift, and that hasn't happened for a long time. Right? And she doesn't need to maintain it. She only needs to maintain that until November, right?
Right.
With black women, they were the first group to jump in. There's a rising trend, they say, in support from Asian Americans, especially the Asian
Certainly going to
Indians.
give Trump something to think about constantly, and that's another good thing that maybe
you're
this
right.
will wear him down.
And Brian, I mean, I say Trump has no human characteristics. and he doesn't. But I'm always saying he doesn't have any humane characteristics. Of course, he has human characteristics. And when you're under stress and pressure, it's tougher than when you're not. And he's really under,
And he's crazy, so you have that
Oh,
constant
yeah.
pressure. Maybe he
But
will
but
break.
I mean, but we've said, and you've said it, and others have said it. He's not a brave person, and so why someone might double down, fight harder. Uh, I could see him just sitting and moping, and the jokes about there's no ketchup within 100 miles of Mar-a-Lago because supposedly he throws ketchup at the wall. But the last thing I want to say, kind of in deference to this too, uh, the political rules are gone, and one of the rules was you do not attack family members, right? You don't, and that's gone as we see. But it's gone kind of on both sides too. I mentioned last briefly, and I think now it's safe in saying, uh, Barron Trump, who's Donald's youngest son, who may be 9 feet by now. Man, he's a tall dude. Um, but it is known that he does have problems also. And I know this for a fact because this school that he went to is populated by people with Asperger, not major things. But this story circulated, and it was pretty bad. All the way, I'll just give you some highlights on it. That he had killed 3 animals, attacked 2 nannies, had gotten into, had a sexual contact thing at a sleepover, and also when people were bothering him, he didn't want to get around, he would shit his pants. No, I don't think any of that was true, but it's out there. So that's kind of where we are in politics today. No matter how weird the story, there's a word weird, right? It gets out there, but there are weird truths out there. So the weird false truths say, well, yeah, that sounds like something he would do, or he looks like, he looks like someone who would do that. And so again, my word of caution to people, for all of us, myself included, so I blow it sometimes. Please be very sure that what you post is the truth, simply because we have enough untruths circulating out there. We don't need more.
Mhm.
We just don't.
Well
And
said.
we can win on the truth, and we will. Just if you believe as I do in Kamala's, given the facts surrounding that, when we fight, and I would say it this way, I would say it a little bit this time we're going to fight and we're going to win.
That's what should be done.
Okay. So
All right.
yeah, thanks everyone for watching. Brian, I'll be leaving your fair state tomorrow. When I go by, I'll wave. I'll be 2 cities over from you. I don't know what time that'll be, but hopefully the wave will get
All
to
right,
you.
well, enjoy the rest of your stay, Dave.
Okay.
And we'll see if we do something during the week. I know we didn't do one this week in between, kind of got caught up with things, but
And so did I, Brian. Don't put all the blame
all
on
right,
yourself.
all right. So Dave, we'll see it for sure next Sunday, hopefully, and we'll see what happens in the news. Okay. Good
All
night,
right.
everybody, and thank you.
Good night.